Hey everyone, Father Warner here. I'm recording for Thursday in the 6th week of Easter, and we are continuing with our study of the Acts of the Apostles. Our text today is taken from chapter 18, verses 1 to 8, and we find Paul now in Corinth. So, just very quickly, chapter 17 told us of Paul's journey through three major Greek cities. He went to Thessalonica. From there, there was a riot. He had to leave. Comes to Beroea. He meets with some success, but the Jews of Thessalonica, when they hear of his successes, follow him to Beroea, and then they drive him away. And finally, Paul comes to Athens. On the whole, he barely makes much inroad into the Greek communities. But it's interesting, and you will see this even when Paul goes to Ephesus. There's a kind of a pattern. Paul will always go to the Jews, he will go to the synagogue, he will be met with a mixed reaction. There will be some who will accept his word, others will outrightly reject him, even create a riot in the city, and then Paul moves on. So we are told that Paul comes to the city of Corinth. He leaves Athens. He has a discussion at the Areopagus, which was, as I said to you, both a council as well as a hill, and that left him with a few who were really interested. Most of them laughed because they could not reconcile their understanding of the immortality of the soul with our understanding of the resurrection. So we are told that he now comes to Corinth. Corinth was a very interesting city. About 144 years before Christ, Corinth rebelled against the Roman Empire. It was a Roman colony, and the Romans crushed Corinth. This is how the Romans dealt with any rebellion. They would crush you to such an extent, as we know they did with Jerusalem, that it was hard to rebuild. But Corinth was subsequently rebuilt, and it was rebuilt because Corinth had two major ports. So this was a very important city. It was a long strip of land. It controlled the Greek mainland in the north to the rest of Greece in the south. So Corinth was not only important as a business place, but it had a rather poor moral life. To call someone, to say his behavior was like a Corinthian, was to mean that he was a very immoral person, or to say this person has a Corinthian companion. It means that he has a prostitute as a companion. So it had a very, very poor image in the rest of the Mediterranean world. And Paul lands in Corinth. Now, interestingly, Paul is going to stay here for a year and a half. And sometimes, you read the text, and a few verses, 3 verses, communicate so much. We know that Paul lived here for 1.5 years, and as he arrives here, he meets a couple. He meets Aquila and Priscilla. They have left Rome. We know that the Emperor Claudius expelled all the Jews from Rome, and he expelled them because there were 2 reasons, but one of the reasons was he felt that they were responsible for all the rioting in Rome. So he expels them. They are now in Corinth, and very interestingly, we are told their profession. By the way, Paul makes excellent friends with Aquila and Priscilla. This is a couple. He will mention them in 1 Corinthians. It's a lifelong friendship. And I want to say this here, thank God for your friends. I have some very dear friends. I have many acquaintances, but I'm blessed to have a few friends. I don't know whether I've told you this. By nature, I'm very shy. I like to be, you will not find me in the social circuit. When I was a young priest, I did all of that nonsense, and I really, it kind of put me off. It took me away from God, in fact. And I'm very happy. I have a few very, very close friends. And these are people that, you can go to their home, you can throw your legs up, they don't judge you, what you wear, what you look, what you eat. You are loved, and that's how you need to have friends. And Paul had Aquila and Priscilla. He had a couple who cared and loved him. And very interestingly, they were tent makers, so they shared Paul's profession. Now, please don't think these tents that they made were some childish tents. These were luxury villas at that point of time, because there were lots of Bedouins also in much of the Roman world that needed these very elaborately built tents. So Paul also we know that he earned his keep. He tells us he earned his keep by building tents, and he stays with them. He enjoys their friendship. So you can read that in verse 3. What this text also tells us of today is that Paul went every Sabbath. You see it in verse 4, and I like how it begins. Verse 4, it says, every Sabbath he would argue. Some translations will be, he will discuss in the synagogue, and he would try to convince the Jews and Greeks. And I think there are two things there. That Paul never skipped Sabbath service. He never skipped it. Remember, I told you that the early church continued to hold a Jewish character for a very, very long time, till roughly about 70 AD. They were still very Jewish. It is only after 70 AD that they were completely kicked out of the synagogues, and therefore they began their little home churches. So Paul always went to the synagogue. Yeah, he didn't ask who's the preacher, what time is the mass, what time is the choir. I think we need to go to church because we encounter God there. Go early, spend some time in prayer, talk to Jesus, and even the worst preacher, trust me, has something that can touch your life if you're only open to God. So he goes there, and he goes there to argue, as the text says, or discuss, as some texts say, with both the Jews and the Greeks. Now, let me explain this, because you would expect to find Jews in a synagogue, but there were also Greeks who liked the concept of monotheism. Monotheism is one, theism, theos, God. So the concept of one God. They also were very attracted to the moral life, the ethical life of Judaism. And so while they continued to be Greek speaking, followed Greek culture, we call that Hellenism. So while they continued to be Gentile in many ways, they were inclined to Judaism, and that's why you would find them in a synagogue. So I hope that is clear. And Paul comes there and he argues and convinces them. Now, the text also tells us that, remember, Silas and Timothy left Paul in Beroea because Paul had to flee. He goes to Athens. He is now joined by Silas and Timothy. They come from Macedonia, also having proclaimed the word. And they come, and verse 6 tells us that the Jews and some of the Greeks did not accept the teaching of Paul. Now, if these are very few, verses 1 to 8, in fact, verses 1 to 17 barely tell us much. If you really want to know what was going on in the Corinthian church, read Paul's letter to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. And you will see that this was a tough community. He didn't have it easy. Yeah, they even questioned the fact that he was an apostle. They questioned his in a way, was he ethical enough? They had leadership issues. They had all kinds of problems. Immorality, of course, that was part of the city. So Paul didn't have it very easy. But we are told that they opposed and they reviled him. Okay, they not only opposed him, they mocked him, they made fun of him. And this very often is what preachers have to face. Now, we are told, forgive and forget and let it go. I want to always say, you may forgive, but it's very, very hard to forget. Jesus said, forgive 70 times. He never said forgive and forget. When you remember the pain and hurt, forgive again. Yeah, you can't forget. Nobody can forget. You're very foolish if you believe you can forget. If you do, I think we have to build an altar for you as a saint. But They opposed him, they reviled him, and Paul also gave in to fits of anger, if I may say. We are told, in the scriptures, Jesus tells them, take your sandals and bang them together so not a bit of the dust of that city clings onto you. Paul goes one step ahead. He takes off his cloak and shakes it so that not only his sandals, but even from his cloak, not a bit of dust of their dust, should tarnish him. And he says, your blood be on your own heads. I'm innocent. If you go marching to hell, you call that upon yourself. I have done my duty. And I think sometimes if we as preachers said that, many people would take us a little more seriously. And he says, from now on, I will go to the Gentiles. And you must remember this in ministry. When God closes a door, he always opens a window. And in this case, he opens a window, we are told, to Justus, who is a worshipper of God. So he hardly gets out of the synagogue, and there are those who want to hear him. And we are told Justus or Justus is a worshipper of God. Again, that word worshipper of God, whenever you see it in the text, means that he is one of those Gentiles, as I said, who was monotheistic in his approach, followed and liked and appreciated the ethical lifestyle of Judaism. So Justus, a worshipper of God, his house was next to the synagogue. He was kicked out of one, and God literally opened the next door for him. Also Crispus, who's the official of the synagogue. We know from 1 Corinthians that Paul personally baptized Crispus. So here is a person, he's an official of the synagogue. He becomes a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. Now, I want to say this and end the teaching with this. Paul really had it bad. He didn't have an easy ministry. Sometimes as a priest, I often feel, I've not had an easy ministry. It's been tough. But those are moments. By and large, God has been very, very kind to me, and I've been tremendously blessed. But you sometimes feel low. All of us go through this. Even if you are a housewife, a husband, a member of your family, you feel unappreciated, you feel low, people criticize you, they haven't understood you, you've had a bad day, and you go through those feelings of being low. Go to the Lord. Tell him, Lord, I'm really not feeling good today. It's a bad day. And I think Paul must have gone to God several times like this. We know in the Old Testament, Moses grumbled and complained. We know the prophets did it. Jeremiah complained bitterly. He told the Lord, you seduced me. I got seduced. Amos, Hosea, all of them didn't want this job. You've got to be crazy to do God's work. And at some time, you will feel rejected for even being a witness of Jesus Christ. Go to the Lord. He's the only one we have. So take that to Jesus whenever. Don't be too depressed. I know I want to share this from my own personal life. I feel sometimes very low. Finally, I voted. So for those in Bombay and other parts of India that haven't voted, please go and vote. I read also all your comments on what I should wear. And I want to tell you, I was very touched. Just about everybody said, Father, wear what you feel comfortable. But one person made a very good point. They said many people might just latch on to your teaching for the first time, and they may not even know you are a priest, especially if they missed the first part, Father Warner here. I think I'm a little inclined to get back into a clerical shirt. There's a good point there, and I need to weigh that in. Having said that, thank you for your support. You feel very loved when people are understanding of what you are going through. And I was really touched by your kindness. Those who messaged me on WhatsApp, those of you who left your comments. So don't forget to leave your comments, leave your thoughts, leave a message, say hello, tell me which part of the world you are from. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, leave a comment. I'll see you tomorrow as usual. Bye for now.